The senator's daughter walked into the courtroom like she owned the place, chin up, confidence dripping off her with every step. But that confidence didn't last long. She interrupted Judge Judy 4 times before even sitting down. 4 times. By the 4th interruption, the entire room went silent. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold her. She simply picked up the case file and dropped it on the desk with a sharp thud. Then she looked straight at the girl. What she said next erased every bit of that confidence before the senator's daughter even reached her seat. The echo of the file striking the desk had not faded yet. It lingered in the air like a warning no one dared to interpret. And for a moment, even the senator's daughter stood still, not out of respect, out of surprise. The courtroom felt smaller now, as though the walls had drawn a little closer the moment Judge Judy lifted her eyes. The senator's daughter straightened her posture, trying to reclaim the confidence she had lost in those 4 careless interruptions. But confidence behaves like glass. Once it cracks, it never looks the same again. Judy did not speak right away. Silence was her opening argument. She let it settle over the room like dust, letting everyone feel just how much control she had without lifting a finger. The girl swallowed, trying not to show the flicker of doubt crossing her face. She moved closer to the defendant's table, but each step seemed less certain than the one before. Across the room, the plaintiff watched with guarded eyes. She clutched her purse against her chest, fingers trembling. Not from fear of the judge, but from the memory of everything it took to bring this case forward. Every moment of entitlement, every attempt to intimidate her, every reminder that the world bends differently for people with power. She'd carried that weight alone until today. Judge Judy finally broke the silence. "Are you ready to begin, Miss Carter?" The senator's daughter inhaled sharply. "Well, I just think—" But her voice wavered. It was the first sign that the dynamic had shifted. She attempted a smile, the kind people wear when they want to appear unbothered, but the edges trembled. Her hands fluttered over the table as if searching for something to anchor her. Judy studied her with unwavering calm, the kind that exposes truth faster than shouting ever could. "You interrupted me 4 times before sitting down," Judy said, her tone level, almost disarmingly quiet. "Is that how you behave in rooms where people do not know your last name?" A ripple ran through the audience, a chorus of held breaths, exchanged glances, barely contained reactions. The girl stiffened. Her chin lifted again, a last grasp at the image she walked in with, but the ground beneath her confidence had shifted, and she could feel it. "I was not trying to be disrespectful," she insisted, though the words did not carry the strength she intended. Judy's eyebrow lifted, not surprised, not impressed, just aware. "Good," she replied. "Then you will not mind if we proceed with facts." The girl's lips parted as if she wanted to object again, but something in Judy's expression froze the words before they formed. For the first time since she entered, she did not interrupt. She simply stood there, waiting, or bracing. The plaintiff lowered her eyes, sensing the moment tightening like a cord pulled too far, and then Judge Judy reached toward the file again. Her fingers brushed the edge, her gaze sharpened. "Before we begin," she said, "tell me something, Miss Carter. Why were you so desperate to speak first?" The girl's breath caught. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Not yet. Not with Judy looking straight through her. The question hung between them, suspended in the still air like dust that refused to fall. Judge Judy did not blink. The senator's daughter did. Her lips parted again, but the answer she wanted to give, the confident, polished version, simply was not there. What emerged instead was a thin breath, a quiet stumble of sound, and a look that betrayed the truth. She had expected control. She had not expected resistance. Judy leaned back just slightly, the kind of subtle movement that felt like an entire shift in atmosphere. "Let us try again," she said, voice steady. "Why the urgency to make yourself heard before anyone else?" The girl straightened her shoulders, clinging to the last scraps of composure. "I just wanted to clarify things," she replied. "People often misunderstand me." Judy's expression did not change. She did not nod, did not reassure, did not soften. She simply let those words sit, exposed, unsupported, fragile. "Misunderstood," Judy repeated, tasting the word like something she had heard 1,000 times before. Interesting. Across the courtroom, someone shifted in their seat. Even the smallest sounds seemed louder now, the creak of a chair, the quiet rustle of a coat, the distant hum of the overhead lights. Everything framed the tension building at that narrow wooden bench. Judy lifted the top page of the case file with deliberate slowness. The paper made a soft brushing sound, almost delicate, yet somehow more intimidating than a slammed gavel. "Miss Carter," Judy said, eyes fixed on the page. "Before we discuss misunderstandings, we will discuss events." A flicker of alarm flashed across the girl's face. "Events?" "Yes," Judy replied. "Facts, timestamps, statements, the things you interrupted me to avoid hearing." The audience reacted with a ripple of soft murmurs. They were not loud, but they carried weight. Weight the senator's daughter could feel pressing against her spine. "I was not avoiding anything," she insisted, her voice rising by a hair. "I just wanted to make sure the narrative was not—" Judy lifted her eyes sharply. The girl stopped mid-sentence. "Miss Carter," Judy said, her tone quiet but exact, "the narrative will be built on evidence, not interruptions. That is how this room works." Something in the girl's posture faltered. Her chin lowered a fraction, her breath shortened, her fingers curled inward on the table edge. Confidence was slipping, not in a dramatic fall, but in a slow, visible melt. Judy watched her without malice, but without mercy either. The way a surgeon watches a patient moments before incision, calm, focused, precise. "Let us begin with the moment you contacted the plaintiff," Judy said. "A very different tone from the one you brought into this courtroom." The girl blinked hard, as if forced to rewind a memory she did not want to revisit. The plaintiff's eyes widened slightly. She had not forgotten that moment for a single day. Judy slid the page forward. "Before we read this aloud, is there anything you would like to add?" The senator's daughter swallowed, glancing at the page, then at Judy. Her answer was only one word: "Wait," and Judy's finger tapped the paper before she could finish. The word "wait" still hovered in the air when Judge Judy's finger tapped the edge of the page, a soft, precise sound that cut through the girl's attempted protest. But Judy did not look at her. She turned instead to the plaintiff. "Ms. Avery," Judy said, voice steady, "you may speak now." The shift in attention felt like a camera pan, the whole courtroom turning with it. The plaintiff stiffened, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. For a moment she looked as though she might fold inward, the weight of the moment too heavy to hold. But then she lifted her chin just slightly, enough to be seen. Her eyes flicked toward the senator's daughter, not with anger, but with a quiet, exhausted resolve. "Yes, Your Honor," she whispered. Judge Judy nodded once, an invitation to stand. The plaintiff rose slowly, the legs of her chair scraping softly against the floor, a sound that vibrated with all the tension she carried inside her. Her hands shook as she adjusted her notes, though she never took her eyes off Judy. "When you are ready," Judy said gently. The plaintiff drew a breath. "This started 3 months ago," she began, her voice steadier than expected. "I had an accident, a small one. My car was parked outside my building, and when I came out, the bumper was scratched, the paint was cracked, and there was a note." The senator's daughter shifted, her jaw tightening. The plaintiff continued, words coming slowly at first, then gathering momentum. "It was not a rude note. It just said, 'Call me, I will take care of it.' So I did. I thought we would handle it like adults." The courtroom listened without a single breath out of place. "But when she picked up the phone," the plaintiff said, voice trembling now, "everything changed. She told me that I should be grateful. She even left a note at all, that no one would believe me if I made a big deal about it. That it was just a scratch, and I should let it go." The senator's daughter looked away, eyes hardening like stone trying to hold its shape under heat. The plaintiff swallowed, her eyes turning glossy. "I did not know who she was at first. I just knew she was angry. I thought maybe she was having a bad day, but then she said something I will never forget." A hush fell deeper over the room, as if the lights dimmed. "She said," the plaintiff whispered, "people like you do not get to make demands of people like me." The words hit the air like a blade falling. Judge Judy's expression remained unreadable, but her gaze sharpened, a subtle flare of controlled fury behind calm eyes. The senator's daughter finally looked up, her facade trembling. The plaintiff exhaled shakily. "I felt small, humiliated, afraid, not because she hit my car, but because she made it clear she thought she was above me. Silence wrapped around the courtroom like a tight cloth. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Miss Carter," she said without turning, "do you disagree with anything Ms. Avery just said?" The senator's daughter opened her mouth, but before any words could form, the weight of the silence answered for her, louder than denial, louder than excuses. The silence did not simply fill the room, it pressed on it, the way humidity presses against the skin before a storm breaks. Judge Judy let that silence linger another beat before turning her full attention back to the senator's daughter. "Miss Carter," Judy said, voice steady as glass, "this is your opportunity. Do you disagree with anything Ms. Avery has said?" The girl blinked rapidly, her expression tightening like someone trying to hold back both anger and fear. Her lips parted, but what came out was not confidence. It was a brittle laugh, a short, sharp sound that cracked halfway through. The first fracture. "Well," she said, trying to gather the remnants of her poise, "people exaggerate things. I never said she could not make demands of me. I just meant she was being dramatic." Judy's eyebrow lifted, not in surprise, in confirmation, like she had just watched a predictable mistake unfold exactly on cue. "Dramatic," Judy repeated. "That's the word you choose?" The girl straightened her blouse as if tidying fabric could repair the unraveling of her credibility. "Yes," she insisted, "all of this is being blown out of proportion. I was trying to help. She misunderstood my tone." Ms. Avery's throat tightened, but she stayed silent. Judy reached down and opened the file again. The sound was soft, but in the tense quiet, it felt loud enough to echo. She flipped to the next page, a printed screenshot, heavy and damning in its stillness. "Let us take a look at your tone," Judy said quietly. The girl froze. Judy lifted the page and read aloud. "People like you do not get to make demands of people like me." Her voice remained calm, unshaken, but the words landed with surgical force. "That is an exact quote, Miss Carter, not a paraphrase." The girl's breath caught. She tried to speak, a word, a protest, anything, but the sounds collided in her throat instead of forming sentences. Her face flushed, then paled, then flushed again in a dizzying cycle of emotional exposure. That was taken out of context," she finally managed. Judy looked up. Her gaze direct, unwavering. "I'm reading the context." A soft, collective gasp rippled through the room. The senator's daughter shifted in her seat, fingers gripping the edge of the table as if she could anchor herself to it. Power, the one thing she walked in with, was slipping out of her hands, grain by grain. "And this," Judy added, sliding the page closer to the bench, "contradicts what you said a moment ago. That is called a lie, Miss Carter. A small one, perhaps, but lies have a way of revealing larger truths." The girl's face tightened again, but this time not in anger, in fear. The audience leaned forward, sensing the turning tide. Judy placed the page down and prepared to open the next section of the file, the one the girl clearly did not want anyone to see. Judy rested her finger on the tab and said, "Let us discuss what you tried to hide before you even stepped into this courtroom." The moment Judge Judy touched the tab of the next section, the senator's daughter's breath visibly hitched, a tiny, involuntary gasp that revealed far more than any polished speech ever could. The courtroom seemed to lean in with her, drawn by gravity toward the unraveling that was quietly beginning behind her carefully composed exterior. Judy did not rush. She lifted the page with the calm precision of someone who had done this for decades, someone who understood that truth, when revealed slowly, cuts the deepest. "This," Judy said, tapping a highlighted timestamp, "is your message to Ms. Avery sent at 11:42 p.m. the night before you met her in person. Would you like to read it aloud, Miss Carter?" The girl's face drained. I do not think that is necessary." Judy nodded once. "Then I will." She held the paper up just enough to catch the overhead lights. "If you try to push this any further, you will regret it," she read, each word steady, each syllable slicing through the air like thin, sharp ice. The girl exhaled sharply, a crack of panic leaking through the last of her defenses. I did not mean regret like that. I only meant—" "You meant," Judy cut in, "to intimidate her." "No." The girl insisted too quickly, too loudly. Her voice bounced off the courtroom walls, a desperate echo she instantly regretted. No, I meant she should not escalate the situation because my schedule is full and… Judy raised her hand. The girl fell silent mid-sentence, as if someone had turned down the volume on her entire body. Across the aisle, the plaintiff's hands clenched together, knuckles pale. Watching the girl unravel was a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was finally being seen, sorrow that entitlement could warp a person so profoundly. Judy leaned forward. Let me explain something to you, Miss Carter. When a person without power hears the words, "You will regret it," from someone with your level of privilege and influence, they hear a threat. The girl blinked rapidly, her eyes shining with something dangerously close to tears. Not remorse, not yet, but the first sting of losing control. I was just frustrated, she whispered. People expect things from me. They think I have all this authority. I cannot deal with everything. That, Judy replied, is not an excuse to bully someone who simply wants accountability. The girl looked down, twisting her fingers together until her knuckles reddened. Her breathing grew uneven, each inhale tight, each exhale shaky. Judy flipped to another timestamp. Now explain this one, she said. A message sent only 4 minutes later. The one where you said she should remember who she was talking to. The senator's daughter closed her eyes, a silent admission that the harder she fought, the faster she sank. Judge Judy watched her closely, not with cruelty, but with the steady gaze of someone waiting for honesty to finally surface. Miss Carter, Judy said quietly, you are at a crossroads. Continue deflecting, and this gets worse. Tell the truth, and we can move forward. The girl opened her eyes, wide and trembling. Judy slid one final page forward. Start with this timestamp, she said. The one you cannot talk your way out of. The page slid across the desk with a soft whisper, but the sound hit the senator's daughter like a gavel strike. Her eyes darted toward the timestamp highlighted in yellow, a slanted mark of truth she had tried desperately to forget. 11:46 p.m. The moment everything shifted from arrogance to intent. Judge Judy folded her hands over the file, her expression unreadable but her presence unshakable. This is the message, she said, that Ms. Avery received immediately after telling you she planned to document the damage properly, 4 minutes after your first threat. The girl swallowed hard. Even that movement looked uneven. She tried to speak, a weak attempt at explanation, but the words tangled in her throat. I was under stress that night. I had a campaign event the next morning, and people were emailing me non-stop. I was overwhelmed. Her voice cracked, but the reasoning slid off Judy's desk like water off polished wood. We are all overwhelmed at times, Judy replied calmly. Very few of us respond by trying to silence someone who simply wants fairness. The girl's breathing grew shallow. She could feel the courtroom watching her, not with curiosity now, but with a dawning sense of recognition. They had seen her type before, the ones who believed pressure granted permission to harm. Ms. Avery lowered her gaze, clutching the strap of her purse tighter. The memory of that night pulsed behind her eyes, the dread, the humiliation, the sinking feeling that justice did not belong to people like her. Judy tapped the timestamp once with her finger. Read the message, Miss Carter. The girl's eyes widened in horror. I cannot. Then I will, Judy said, lifting the page. She read with quiet precision, Be smart about this. You do not want problems you cannot handle. A collective murmur rippled through the courtroom. The girl closed her eyes. Her composure, already fragile, began to buckle. That sounds, Judy said evenly, like another threat. The senator's daughter shook her head in a frantic, tiny motion. I did not mean it as a threat, she insisted, though even she seemed unconvinced of the words leaving her mouth. I meant she should not escalate things and drag people into situations they do not understand. Judy leaned forward, her voice lowering until it felt like the air itself tightened. Miss Carter, the truth does not change because you phrase it politely. Pressure does not excuse aggression. And your title does not give you the right to intimidate anyone. The girl's eyes shimmered with humiliation, not yet regret, but the sting of losing her grip on the narrative she came in with. Ms. Avery looked up then, her voice the softest sound in the room. "I just wanted her to fix the damage," she said. "That is all I ever wanted." Something in the girl's expression flickered at those words, the first faint bruise of shame. Judy closed the file with slow deliberation, the sound quiet but weighted. "Now," she said, turning back to the defendant, "let us talk about what you did next." A hush fell over the room, not just silence but anticipation. Judy's hand hovered over the thickest section of the file. "The next part," she said, "is where your choices begin to show their true shape." The thickest section of the file rested beneath Judge Judy's hand like a sleeping truth, heavy, patient, waiting to wake. The senator's daughter stared at it as if it were a countdown clock ticking toward her undoing. "Miss Carter," Judy said quietly, "before I open this, I want you to answer one question." The girl straightened, though the movement lacked its former confidence. Her shoulders rose, but not in superiority, in bracing. "What question?" Judy's gaze sharpened, cutting straight through the thin shield of composure the girl tried to rebuild. "Why did you send the final message?" A ripple moved through the courtroom. Everyone knew the message being referenced, the one teased in murmurs, hinted in the plaintiff's eyes, implied in the timestamps. The senator's daughter hesitated, her throat working around a breath that would not smooth out. I told you, I was overwhelmed. She kept pushing and I—" "You are not answering," Judy interrupted, her tone gentle but firm, like a parent correcting a careless child. "Why did you send it? Not how you felt, not what your day was like. Why?" The girl blinked rapidly, her eyes darting toward Ms. Avery, only once but enough to expose the fear she'd been trying to hide, the fear of seeing herself through someone else's truth. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with a defensive edge. "Because she kept acting like she had the right to demand things from me." A soft gasp traveled through the courtroom. Judge Judy tilted her head slowly, as if she wanted the girl to hear her own words echo back at her. "And why?" Judy asked. "Did you think she did not have that right?" The girl's lips parted. A flicker of panic entered her eyes, the realization she had walked into her own trap. I do not know," she stammered. I'm used to people handling things differently with me." Judy nodded once, a precise surgical motion. "That," she said, "sounds like entitlement, Miss Carter. Pure and simple." The girl inhaled sharply, as if the word itself slapped her. But the spiral had already begun. Entitlement does not collapse quietly. It fights on the way down. "She was rude to me first," the girl blurted. "She sounded accusatory. She acted like I was the problem when you hit her car," Judy said, her tone flat. "I said I would fix it," the girl snapped. Judy's expression did not move. "Then why?" she asked. "Did you spend more time intimidating her than resolving the damage?" The girl froze. Her breath hitched. Her shoulders dropped the slightest fraction. For the first time, her reflection in Judy's eyes frightened her more than the judgment itself. Across the room, the plaintiff watched the unraveling with a quiet that held no satisfaction, only a tired grief. Judy opened the thick section of the file. Papers rustled like whispers in a crowded room. A message thread, a set of call logs, a note handwritten in rushed ink. The girl's face drained of color. "Miss Carter," Judy said softly, "the next part shows exactly what you did once intimidation did not work." The entire room stilled, anticipation tightening every breath. Judy lifted the first page. "What you did next," she said, "is where this case truly begins." Judge Judy lifted the first page of the thick section, and the courtroom shifted, not physically, but emotionally. The air tightened, the girl's breath shortened, even the plaintiff's hands stilled, as though bracing for a truth she had only partially glimpsed before. Judy's eyes scanned the page. Her expression did not change, but something in the room did. A faint tremor of anticipation hummed beneath the surface, like static before a storm. "Miss Carter," she said, her tone measured, "tell me who you contacted after Ms. Avery refused to back down." The senator's daughter blinked, confusion flashing across her face. Confusion, followed quickly by dread. I do not know what you mean." Judy flipped the page toward the light. The reflection glinted across the girl's eyes like a spotlight catching a lie mid-formation. "This is a call log," Judy explained, tapping the column. 3 outgoing calls, all within 10 minutes of Ms. Avery telling you she would pursue documentation. 1 to your friend, 1 to your assistant, and 1— She paused. The girl's shoulders stiffened. To your father's office. A quiet shock rippled through the audience, a tightening of jaws, a slow widening of eyes. The room did not gasp. It absorbed the information with a kind of cold clarity. That is not what it looks like, the girl said quickly, her voice trembling as she tried desperately to hold the ground beneath her feet. I was asking for advice. I just wanted guidance. Guidance, Judy repeated softly. Is that what you call it? She lifted the next page. A printed email, 9 lines long, short, sharp, written with the confidence of someone who assumed the world would bend for her. The girl's face drained as she recognized it. She needs to be reminded we are not equals, Judy read aloud, her voice calm, almost quiet. Handle it. Ms. Avery's breath caught. Her hand flew instinctively to her mouth as she stared at the email, disbelief widening her eyes. The senator's daughter shook her head violently. No, that was not meant to be taken literally. I was frustrated. People send dramatic messages all the time, but most do not send them from official family accounts, Judy replied. A heavy silence fell, not angry, not shocked, just heavy. The kind of silence that comes when truth stops being a story and becomes a mirror. Judge Judy held up the file slightly higher. Your assistant responded within 6 minutes, she said, and what she sent Ms. Avery later that night was a direct result of your instruction. The girl's breathing faltered. Her reflection shattered fully now, not in one clean break, but in slow, splintering fragments. I did not mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I swear I did not. Judy lowered the file, her gaze steady. Intentions do not erase impact, and privilege does not erase responsibility. The tension in the courtroom thickened with each word. The girl searched the room desperately, as if looking for someone, anyone, to defend her, to catch her, to soften the fall. But no one moved. Not even her own voice could save her now. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses. This, she said, tapping the folder, is where your choices stopped being impulsive and became deliberate. She closed the file halfway, looked the girl in the eyes, and said, And what comes next? You will not be able to talk your way out of. The folder stayed half-closed, but its weight might as well have been crushing. The senator's daughter stared at it like a trap that finally revealed itself. But the real trap was her silence, her inability to control it, to shape it, to hide behind it. Judge Judy folded her hands calmly. Miss Carter, she said, before I continue, I am giving you an opportunity. Is there anything you want to tell me before I open the rest of this file? The girl's mouth opened, and nothing came out. It was not arrogance this time, not defiance, not even denial. It was fear, raw, unfiltered, human fear. Her throat tightened around the truth she had been trying to outrun since the moment she stepped into the courtroom. Her gaze flicked to Ms. Avery, one quick glance, but it carried all the weight of guilt pressing down on her shoulders. She whispered, the sound barely forming. I did not mean to hurt her. The words trembled with sincerity and self-protection locked in battle. But intention was no longer the issue. The evidence had already established impact. Judy leaned forward an inch. Then why, she asked quietly, did you continue escalating after she asked for something completely reasonable? The girl's breath shivered. Because, she swallowed hard, because I felt like she was challenging me, making me look irresponsible, and I cannot afford that. Judy lifted an eyebrow. Cannot afford it? To whom? The girl's facade cracked another inch. My father's team, she murmured. The people who work for him. Everyone expects me to be composed, confident, in control. Her voice faltered, emotion swirling beneath every word. If I look weak, they treat me like a liability. The courtroom shifted, not in sympathy, but in comprehension. Suddenly her arrogance had context, not justification, but roots. Ms. Avery's eyes softened despite herself. She had not expected the woman who belittled her to look this breakable, this young, this exhausted. Judge Judy tapped the file once, a sound that seemed to puncture the air. The pressure you feel, she said, does not give you permission to threaten or intimidate anyone, especially not someone with less power than you." The girl nodded slowly, as if the truth were landing for the first time. "But," Judy continued, "this file suggests your behavior was not a single impulsive moment. It shows patterns, choices, escalation." A tremor ran through the girl's hands. She blinked rapidly, trying to stop tears that threatened to spill. "I know," she whispered. "I know I handled everything wrong. I panicked, and I made it worse. Every step, I made it worse." For the first time, her voice cracked openly, the sound of entitlement collapsing under the weight of consequence. Judy studied her closely. "Are you prepared for what comes next, Miss Carter? Because the next section does not just show what you did. It shows why." The girl exhaled shakily, her composure splintering into something smaller, quieter, painfully honest. I'm not sure," she admitted, voice thin. "But I think I have to be." The room went silent, deeper than before, a silence made not of shock, but of inevitability. Judy reached for the next page, her voice low and final. "Then let us begin with the truth you tried hardest to bury." Judge Judy lifted the next page slowly, deliberately, the kind of pacing that makes a room forget how to breathe. The senator's daughter stared at the file as though it were peeling back layers she had spent years constructing. Layers of composure, layers of image, layers of inherited expectation. "Miss Carter," Judy said, her voice steady, "this next part is your chance to speak before I read what your own words reveal." The girl inhaled shakily, wiping at her cheek in a motion she tried to disguise as impatience rather than emotion. It did not work. Everyone saw the tremble in her hand. "I know I went too far," she murmured. "I know that now." "That's not the question," Judy replied. The girl looked up, confusion and fear flickering through her eyes. "Then what is?" Judy's gaze didn't waver. "Why did you go this far?" The girl's breath stilled. She blinked rapidly as if trying to keep the truth from rising, but the courtroom had already shifted. It demanded honesty now, not performance. She began, voice faint. "I never meant for anything to become threatening." "Then why were your messages threatening?" Judy asked, gentle but precise. "Why did you escalate?" The girl's eyes dropped to the table. When she spoke, her voice cracked in a way that sounded less like arrogance and more like a confession fighting its way out. "Because I was scared." The room went silent. Not shocked, but alert. "Scared of what?" Judy asked. "Of looking incompetent," she whispered. "Of disappointing people. Of ruining my father's image. I know everyone thinks I walk around feeling untouchable, but that's not true. Everyone around me expects perfection, and when Ms. Avery confronted me with the damage, all I could think was that people would say I was reckless, irresponsible, unfit." Judy listened without interrupting, the rare kind of silence that welcomes truth instead of shaming it. The girl continued, her voice unraveling sentence by sentence. "And when she pushed back, I felt cornered. Like if I didn't shut it down quickly, it would become some story online. And then my father's team would go into crisis mode, and they would say it was my fault again. Everything is always my fault when it comes to optics." Her breath hitched. Avery watched her, shoulders softening in reluctant empathy. She did not forgive the harm, but she finally understood its twisted origin. The senator's daughter wiped her eyes again, no longer pretending indifference. "I overreacted, I panicked, I tried to control the narrative, and the more I tried to control it, the worse it got." Judy finally leaned forward. "And did bullying Ms. Avery make you feel more in control?" The girl shook her head, a tear slipping free despite her effort to hold it back. "No," she whispered. "It made me feel powerful for a second, and then it made me feel ashamed." Judy nodded, not in approval, but in recognition. Honesty had finally surfaced. "Miss Carter," she said, "there is still more. Something you have not mentioned." The girl stiffened. "More?" Judy lifted the page, a final message written at nearly midnight, one the girl hoped no one would ever see. Judy tapped the paper lightly. "Tell me," she said, "what you did after the shame set in." Judge Judy tapped the paper once more, the sound sharp but measured, a signal that the next truth would not be coaxed out gently. It would be confronted. The senator's daughter stared at the page as though it were a mirror she had spent her whole life avoiding. Her breathing tightened, shallow and uneven, like someone standing at the edge of a confession she could not step away from anymore. "Miss Carter," Judy said, voice low but firm, "the message you sent after midnight, the one you never mentioned, is right here. I would like to hear you say what it was." The girl's lips trembled. I do not remember exactly what I said." Judy lifted a brow. "Then I will remind you." Her fingers slid under the page. She turned it with the slow, deliberate precision of someone unwrapping a truth that had teeth. But Judy did not read it aloud. Not yet. She watched the girl instead, watching the emotions gather like a storm behind her eyes. "Did you mean what you wrote?" Judy asked. The senator's daughter blinked rapidly, and the first tear escaped, a quiet drop that landed on the table like a tiny surrender. "No," she whispered. I do not know. I was spiraling. Everything felt like it was falling apart, and I just wanted it to stop." "What did you want to stop?" Judy asked. The girl's shoulders lifted, then sank, the motion small, defeated, honest in a way she had not allowed herself to be in years. The pressure. The expectations, the way everyone keeps score. I wanted the world to stop judging me for 1 second. Judy waited. The silence stretched until the courtroom could feel it, the weight, the fracture, the truth trying to breathe. The girl pressed both hands flat on the desk, as if steadying herself for impact. "When Ms. Avery told me she was documenting everything, something in me broke. I felt like she was about to take everything from me. My father's approval, the respect people pretend to have, my ability to walk into rooms without being the problem." Her voice cracked. "And I lashed out," she whispered. "Not because she deserved it, not because I had the right, but because I was terrified, and I did not know how to stop myself." Ms. Avery's expression softened, not in forgiveness, but in understanding the human cost of the girl's upbringing. Power had not made her strong. It had made her brittle. Judy finally lifted the page. "This," she said gently, "is the message you sent after all those emotions collided." She read only one line, just one. "Forget I said anything. I'm sorry. Please ignore the last messages." The courtroom froze. The girl covered her mouth with her hand, tears slipping through her fingers, not theatrical, not manipulative, just raw. "And then," Judy continued, "you deleted the messages from your end." The girl nodded, sobbing quietly. "I did, because I hated what I had become in those moments." Judy closed the folder without force, a soft final exhale of paper. "Miss Carter," she said, "the truth is not that you are evil or heartless, it is that you are lost. And fear made you dangerous." The girl cried harder, shoulders shaking. No more arrogance, no more polish, no more armor. Just collapse. Judy folded her hands. "Now," she said, voice settling like a verdict yet unspoken, "let us talk about what happens next." For the first time since the hearing began, the courtroom felt strangely weightless. Not lighter, the tension was still there, but suspended, as though everyone were hovering between what had happened and what was about to follow. The senator's daughter wiped her face with the back of her hand, breath shuddering as she tried to compose herself. But composure no longer held meaning here. There was no image to protect, no narrative to defend. Only the truth and the consequences that came with it. Judge Judy let the silence settle again. But this time, it was not a weapon. It was a pause, a compassionate one. "Miss Carter," she said softly, breaking the quiet, "I want you to understand something clearly." The girl lifted her eyes, still red, still trembling. "You are responsible for what you did," Judy continued, "but you are not solely defined by it." The girl's breath caught, not from fear, but from something unfamiliar, relief. Judy turned the closed file slightly, fingers resting on it like one rests a hand on the back of a chair. "Your actions were wrong. They were harmful. They were intimidating. And whether you meant them or not does not erase their impact." The girl nodded weakly. "But," Judy said, "it also matters that you recognize the shame, that you attempted, even if clumsily, to undo the damage before it spread further. A ripple of soft murmurs passed through the gallery. This wasn't absolution, it was complexity. Ms. Avery exhaled slowly, her shoulders loosening as though a weight she had been bracing against had shifted. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply watched, steady and human. When you deleted your messages, Judy continued, you weren't erasing evidence. You were erasing something you didn't want to be true about yourself. The girl nodded harder now, tears collecting again. Yes, she whispered. I hated that version of me. I didn't want her to exist. I still don't. Judy leaned back. Then let us be very clear. Accountability is not punishment. It is a path forward. The words lingered, a bridge being built between guilt and growth. Judy shifted her gaze toward the plaintiff. Ms. Avery, she said, you've heard the defendant's explanation. Do you wish to speak before I determine the consequences? Ms. Avery hesitated, her hands tightening briefly on her purse. When she stood, her voice held no anger, only a tired honesty that carried more weight than shouting ever could. I was scared of her, Ms. Avery said, not because she's powerful, but because she made me feel like my voice didn't matter, like I was beneath her. The girl flinched, visibly wounded by the reflection. But, Ms. Avery added gently, I don't want her ruined. I don't want to be the reason her life derails. I just wanted her to see me, to treat me like a person. The courtroom absorbed every word. Judy nodded, her eyes softening just a fraction. And she will, Judy said. From this moment forward. She turned back to the senator's daughter. What happens next, Judy said, will reflect both your wrongdoing and your honesty. The girl held her breath. Judy closed the file fully and asked Ms. Avery, do you have anything more to add before I render judgment? Ms. Avery remained standing, though her knees seemed to tremble beneath the weight of everything she had carried into this room, fear, humiliation, dignity, and the quiet hope that justice might somehow restore what entitlement had taken from her. She clasped her hands together, inhaling slowly before speaking. Your Honor, she began, her voice soft but firm, I don't want revenge. I never did. The senator's daughter raised her head slightly, tears still clinging to her lashes. Her breathing hitched, not from panic this time, but from the realization that she was being offered something she had not earned. Grace. Ms. Avery continued. I just wanted her to understand how her words made me feel, how small they made me feel. She paused, her gaze shifting toward the defendant. When she said people like me didn't get to demand things from people like her, I felt invisible, like my rights didn't matter. The girl closed her eyes, shoulders curling inwards, shame rewriting her posture inch by inch. But I also know what it's like, Ms. Avery added softly, to feel overwhelmed, to feel judged, to feel like one mistake defines you forever. A soft murmur rippled through the courtroom, a blend of sympathy and surprise. Judge Judy observed quietly, her expression a blend of attentiveness and depth, letting the sincerity of the moment breathe. Ms. Avery took a small step forward. I don't think she's a bad person. I think she panicked, and the pressure she lives under twisted her judgment. She swallowed. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains it. The senator's daughter looked up then, really looked, meeting Ms. Avery's eyes with a raw vulnerability she had kept hidden behind years of polished perfection. Her lips trembled as she whispered, I'm sorry. I truly am. It wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was small, broken, and real. Ms. Avery nodded, her own eyes glistening. I believe you. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, folding her hands on the desk. This, she said quietly, is what accountability looks like when it meets humanity. The courtroom stilled, not tense, not hostile, but reflective. When two people stand in front of each other without armor, Judy continued, you can finally see the truth, the harm, the intention, the remorse. The senator's daughter wiped her face, tears falling without resistance. I never wanted to be someone who scared people or hurt them. I just didn't realize how much power my words carried. And that, Judy replied, is precisely the lesson. Ms. Avery gave a small, shaky exhale, the kind that releases months of tension. Judge Judy closed the file gently. Before I render judgment, I want to be clear. Justice is not about crushing one person to lift another. It is about balance, restoration, understanding. Both women stood in quiet vulnerability, one seeking closure, the other redemption. Judy straightened, her tone shifting back into the firm cadence of authority. "Now," she said, "here is what justice requires." Judge Judy straightened in her seat, her authority settling over the courtroom like a closing curtain. The moment of shared humanity had passed. Now came the part no one could escape: consequence. Even the air shifted, colder, firmer, braced for what would come next. "Miss Carter," Judy began, her tone steady, crisp, resolute, "your actions were not minor lapses. They were deliberate steps fueled by entitlement, fear, and misuse of influence." The senator's daughter lowered her gaze, blinking through the tears still clinging to her lashes. She didn't argue. She didn't interrupt. She didn't reach for excuses. For the first time since stepping into the courtroom, she looked ready to truly hear the truth. Judy continued, "You intimidated Ms. Avery to protect your image. You attempted to leverage your family's position. You escalated a simple matter into a campaign of pressure. That cannot and will not be dismissed." A faint tremor shook the girl's shoulders. The plaintiff watched quietly, her expression neither triumphant nor angry, just hopeful that fairness was finally landing where it belonged. "But," Judy added, voice softening just slightly, "you also experienced a moment of clarity. You tried, however imperfectly, to retract your threat. That does not erase the harm, but it shows the possibility for growth." The girl exhaled shakily, a breath she had been holding since the file opened. Judy lifted the judgment sheet. "Here is what justice requires today." The courtroom held its collective breath. "First," Judy said, "you will compensate Ms. Avery for the damages to her vehicle in full. No debate, no delay." The girl nodded immediately. "Yes, Your Honor." "Second," Judy continued, "you will issue a written admission of wrongdoing, not crafted by your father's team, not polished by advisors, your words, your accountability." Another nod, slower this time, but sincere. "I understand." "Third," Judy said, "you will provide a statement to the court acknowledging your misuse of influence and the harm it caused. This is not for humiliation. It is for responsibility." The girl's lip quivered. I can do that." Judy leaned forward, her voice lowering. "And finally, you will meet with Ms. Avery, supervised, and listen to her perspective without interruption. You caused fear. Now you will hear it. Fully." Ms. Avery's breath hitched, touched by the fairness of the requirement. Healing didn't come from money. It came from being heard. The senator's daughter nodded again, tears streaming freely. "I will. I promise." Judy set the judgment sheet aside. "This is not about punishing you. It is about ensuring you learn the difference between power and responsibility, between influence and integrity." The girl bowed her head. "Thank you for giving me the chance." Judy didn't smile, but her voice softened. "Make it count." A slow, quiet exhale rippled through the gallery, the kind that signals a chapter closing, a lesson settling, a reckoning landing exactly where it should. Judy turned her gaze to the camera, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. "Privilege collapses," she said, "the second it forgets its accountability." The courtroom felt different now, emptier somehow, as though the conflict that once filled every corner had finally dissolved, leaving only the quiet aftermath of truth. Judge Judy sat back, hands folded, her gaze fixed not on the file anymore, but on the two women standing before her, one humbled, one heard. The senator's daughter wiped her cheeks, not trying to hide the evidence of her breakdown. There was no point. The mask she walked in with had shattered long before this moment. In its place stood someone unsure, unsteady, but real. Someone she had never allowed herself to be in public. Ms. Avery breathed out softly, her shoulders finally, blessedly relaxed. The tremor of fear that once lived in her chest had eased. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't here to win. She simply felt seen. And that was enough. Judge Judy cleared her throat gently. "Before we conclude," she said, her tone quieter now, There is something I want both of you to understand. The senator's daughter lifted her eyes, her gaze steady despite the tears. Ms. Avery leaned in, attentive. Life, Judy continued, is not about perfection, and justice is not about crushing the flawed. It is about guiding them. She turned slightly toward the senator's daughter. Your mistake was not the accident. It was the belief that your status could shield you from accountability. The girl nodded slowly. I know that now. And knowing, Judy replied, is the first step toward change. Judy then looked to Ms. Avery. You showed restraint, patience, and courage coming here. Many people would have collapsed under the pressure she tried to apply. You didn't. Ms. Avery lowered her gaze, touched by the acknowledgement. This courtroom, Judy said, sweeping her eyes across both women, isn't merely a place for rulings. It is a place for truth. And today, the truth demanded humility, remorse, and repair. She closed the file fully, a soft, final sound, a door closing, a chapter ending, a lesson learned. You both leave here today changed, Judy said. One because she finally faced accountability, the other because she finally received it. The senator's daughter inhaled, her voice fragile but sincere. Ms. Avery, I meant what I said earlier. I'm sorry, truly. Ms. Avery offered a gentle nod. Thank you. That means more than you know. Judy gestured toward the exit. This matter is resolved. You are dismissed. The bailiff opened the courtroom door. The senator's daughter hesitated, just a moment, glancing back at Judge Judy with a look that carried gratitude tangled with lingering shame. Then she stepped toward Ms. Avery, not to speak, but simply to walk beside her. As the two left, victim and offender, no longer divided by fear or entitlement, the courtroom seemed to exhale its final, quiet release. Judge Judy watched them go, her gaze sharp but softened by something like hope.